This is how to make a narcissist regret every cruel thing they did to you forever. And I want to begin with the word regret, because it is doing something in this title that requires careful examination before we build anything on top of it. Because how you understand regret in this context will determine whether what this episode offers you is genuinely useful or simply satisfying in the way that revenge fantasies are satisfying, temporarily, from a distance, without any actual change to the real situation your real life is navigating. Regret in the full sense, the genuine, morally organized, specifically personal experience of having done something wrong to a specific person and being moved by that recognition toward something that resembles genuine remorse. That kind of regret is not what we are talking about, because that kind of regret is not reliably available in the narcissist psychological architecture in the form that the word usually implies. The narcissist's relationship with regret, as with every other emotion that requires full, undefended access to one's own interior life, is complicated by the construction, management of anything that would implicate the construction, behavior, as the source of significant harm to another person. Regret that is organized around genuine care for the person harmed is the specific kind that the Fermantially construction was built to prevent from being consciously experienced, because experiencing it would require holding simultaneously the acknowledgement of what was done and the acknowledgement of its impact on someone whose experience genuinely matters. And that combination is precisely what the narcissist defense architecture is organized around not holding. So when this episode talks about making a narcissist regret what they did, it is not talking about producing the full, clean, morally organized version of regret that the word typically implies. It is talking about something that functions like regret from the narcissist side, that occupies the psychological territory that regret would occupy in a person with different defenses, that produces in the narcissist's interior experience something that is the closest available approximation to what regret actually is, and that does so in a way that is permanent rather than temporary, structural rather than episodic, built into the fabric of the narcissist's subsequent experience rather than arriving as a passing recognition that the construction quickly manages back below the surface. That specific, functional, permanent approximation of regret is what this episode is about how to produce. And the how is the part that is going to surprise you, because it is not what most people expect when they hear a title like this one. It is not a strategy. It is not a set of behaviors aimed at the narcissist. It is something considerably more interior and considerably more completely yours than anything that could be aimed at someone else. So stay with me. Let's start with what actually produces the functional regret in the narcissist or FI's psychology, because most people's intuitive answer to this question is wrong in a way that is worth examining directly before we get to what is actually right. The intuitive answer is that the narcissist is made to regret what they did by being confronted with the consequences of what they did, by the person they harmed demonstrating the harm clearly enough that the narcissist cannot avoid the recognition of their responsibility for it, the confrontation, the truth-telling, the specific, documented, incontrovertible account of what was done and what it cost. The moment of being seen clearly as the person who did those things by the person who was on the receiving end of them. This intuitive answer is appealing because it is organized around a model of accountability that works between most people, the model in which someone who has done harm, confronted with a clear account of the harm, has an experience of recognition that produces something in them that changes the behavior and produces the regret. This model works, with normal variations, for most people. It does not work reliably for narcissists. Not because the narcissist is immune to the confrontation lands, as we have established in earlier conversations, and produces a response. But the response the confrontation produces is not the recognition and the change and the regret that the model assumes. It produces the defense, the reframe, the reality contestation, the counter-narrative, the specific array of threat management responses that the construction deploys whenever the accountability conversation arrives, all of which are organized around preventing the confrontation from producing the recognition that would require genuine engagement with the question of what was done and why, and what it means. The confrontation gives the construction something to manage, and the construction is very good at managing things, which means the confrontation, however accurate and however courageously offered, is almost never the thing that produces the functional regret. It produces the defense instead. And the defense, once deployed, actually reduces the likelihood of the functional regret by giving the constructions and management mechanisms something to organize around, something that is external and therefore manageable, rather than leaving them with the internal, unmanageable, undirectable pressure that the truly not caring produces, and that the functional regret actually lives in. What actually produces the functional regret is the specific combination of two things that the confrontation cannot produce simultaneously, and that the truly not caring produces as a natural and unavoidable consequence of its own genuine quality. The first thing is the undeniable reality of the loss, not the loss of the supply. The narcissist has lost supply before, and the replacement mechanism addresses it with sufficient efficiency that the loss of supply alone does not produce anything in the territory of regret. The undeniable reality of the loss of the specific, non-fungible, irreplaceable thing that the relationship with you provided, the being known, the being seen by someone whose seeing was genuine and accurate, the specific quality of connection that only becomes visible in its absence when the absence is permanent enough and clear enough that the replacement landscape's consistent failure to reproduce it can no longer be explained by the inadequacy of the individual replacements. The loss of the non-fungible thing becomes undeniable when enough time has passed and enough replacements have been attempted and enough of the specific insufficiency has accumulated that the narcissist's system cannot maintain the explanation that the next replacement will be different, that the flatness underneath the new relationship's surface is the new relationship limitation rather than the non-fungible thing's absence, that what is missing is findable in someone else rather than specifically and permanently tied to the person who provided it and who is now genuinely, irreversibly gone. The undeniable reality of the loss is the first thing. It arrives not from anything you do aimed at the narcissist. It arrives from your genuine absence, from the truly not caring that removes you from the narcissist psychological landscape as a significant feature and leaves in your place the specific, shaped absence that reveals, by its contours, exactly what used to fill it. The second thing that produces the functional regret is the specific quality of your life in the tame absence, not the performance of your life, not the conspicuous thriving that is aimed at the narcissist and carries the narcissist's awareness in its orientation, even when that awareness is organized around demonstrating something rather than seeking something, the actual quality of your life. The genuine, unperformed, not organized around the narcissist quality of someone who has done the work of returning to themselves, who has rebuilt the self-trust that the explaining erosion was depleting, who has returned to internal authority in the specific way that the instead was describing, who has arrived at the truly not caring not as a strategy or a destination chosen for its effect on the furious and the narcissist, but as the natural result of genuinely investing in the life that the relationship was occupying. This genuine quality, perceptible through the monitoring channels, not as a performance, but as the specific, uncharged, unorganized around the narcissist aliveness of someone who is simply living their own life from a place that is fully their own, is the second thing. And the combination of these two things, the undeniable loss of the non-fungible thing and the genuine quality of your life in the absence, is what produces in the narcissist system the experience that functions like regret, not the regret of the full, conscious, morally organized reckoning, the regret of the actual self, the wounded, defended, rarely accessible actual self that was reached by the relationship and that is now in the undeniable presence of what its own behavior was responsible for producing. The awareness, arriving in the private moments when the construction's management is underfunded, that what was there was specific and irreplaceable and was treated carelessly by a system that did not fully register the value of what it was treating carelessly until the treatment had produced an outcome that the system cannot reverse. That awareness, present in the private moments, carrying the specific weight of genuine loss, and the genuine understanding of the behavior that produced it, organized around something that is actually and permanently gone, rather than something that can be managed back into availability. That awareness is the regret, and it is permanent because the loss is permanent, because the genuineness of your life in the absence is permanent, because the non-fungible thing cannot be found elsewhere, and cannot be manufactured and cannot be retrieved from the address it used to be available at, because the address is no longer responding in the way that the contact was seeking, permanent, which is exactly what the title promises. And the how of producing it, and why the how, is the most counterintuitive and the most specifically personal thing this episode is going to offer, and what it means for the way you orient the next chapter of your life. That is exactly where we are going next. The how is not aimed at the narcissist. This is the most important thing this episode is going to say, and the thing that requires the most repetition before it fully lands. Because the title, Make a Narcissist Regret Every Cruel Thing They Did to You Forever, sounds like something that is aimed at the narcissist. Sounds like a strategy that begins with the narcissist as its target and works backward from the desired effect in the narcissist. Psychology to the behaviors that would produce that effect. Sounds like something you do to them, and the how is the opposite of that. The how begins with you and ends with you, and is organized around you in a way that produces the regret in the narcissist, not as a side effect of aiming at the narcissist, but as the unavoidable consequence of genuinely aiming at yourself, at the life that was always yours to build, at the person you were always supposed to be before the relationship's requirements redirected the energy of your becoming toward the management of the dynamic that was consuming it. The how is the most complete and the most genuinely personal version of the investment in your becoming that everything this channel has been building toward across every previous conversation. And the regret it produces in the narcissist is the most permanent and the most specifically functional version of regret available in their psychology, precisely because it is the byproduct of something that is completely, irrevocably, not about them. Because the regret that is produced by your genuine investment in your own life cannot be managed by the narcissist. As construction, the way that confrontation produced regret can be managed. It cannot be reframed. It cannot be redirected. It cannot be converted into the narcissist's victimhood narrative or incorporated into the patient's self-serving account of what happened or addressed by any of the management tools that the construction has available. Because it is not being produced by something that is aimed at the construction. It is being produced by the genuine quality of the life you are building in the space and a relationship left vacant. And the genuine quality of your life cannot be managed by the narcissist any more than the sunrise can be managed by the person it is illuminating. It simply is. And in its being, it does what it does to the narcissist's psychology, not because you designed it, but because that is the natural consequence of something real being present in the landscape, of a psychology that is organized around the pursuit of what is real, and that has lost the specific real thing that your genuine presence in a relationship provided. So the first element of the how is the most personal and the most foundational. It is the genuine investment in what you actually want, not what would impress the narcissist, not what would demonstrate your value in the specific terms the relationship used to measure value, not the life that would look most like the rebuke of the narrative the narcissist assembled about you, the life that you actually want, the specific, particular, deeply personal version of thriving that reflects your genuine preferences, your genuine values, your genuine sense of what a good life for you looks and feels like from the inside rather than from the outside. This distinction between the life that would look good to the narcissist's monitoring system and the life that feels genuinely good from inside your own experience is the most important distinction the how requires you to make. Because the life organized around looking good to the narcissist in's monitoring system is still a life organized around the narcissist. It is still producing the conspicuous, thriving performance that we have discussed in other contexts. The thriving that carries the narcissist's awareness in its orientation, even when the orientation is toward demonstrating something rather than seeking something. and the conspicuous thriving performance, however impressive it looks, does not produce the functional regret. It produces the narcissist's assessment of the performance, the management of the performance as information, the calibration of the supply-seeking approach in response to the information the ent's performance provides. The performance is still inside the narcissist's operational framework. It can be managed. It can be incorporated. It can be responded to. The genuine investment in what you actually want produces something that is outside the narcissist's operational framework entirely. It produces a life that is not organized around the narcissist at all, not organized around impressing them, not organized around rebutting them, not organized around demonstrating anything to anyone except the internal experience of the person living it. And a life that is not organized around the narcissist is the one thing the narcissist operational framework has no response to, because the operational framework requires you to be organized around the narcissist in some form for any of its responses to be applicable. And you, genuinely invested in what you actually want, are not organized around the narcissist in any form. You have simply left the framework. And leaving the framework is what produces the undeniable loss and the genuine quality of your life. In the absence that we established are the two things that produce the functional regret. The second element of the how is the consistent, daily, unglamorous practice of choosing yourself in the small moments rather than in the grand ones. Because the life that produces the functional regret in the narcissist is not built in grand and moments. It is built in the accumulation of small ones. In the Tuesday morning, where you make the choice that serves your genuine well-being rather than the choice that would have been made in the service of the dynamic's requirements. In the conversation where you say what you actually think rather than the managed version of what you think that the dynamic trained you to substitute. In the boundary that is enforced not because you have decided to enforce it strategically, but because your genuine sense of what you need makes the boundary the natural expression of your own requirements rather than the strategic imposition of a limit on someone else's behavior. In the hour that is spent on something that genuinely nourishes you rather than on the management of someone else's emotional weather. All of these small choices, accumulated across days and weeks and months, are the building material of the genuine life that the how requires. And the accumulation is what produces the specific quality that the monitoring system detects as something it has no adequate response to. Not any single impressive choice, the pattern of all of them. The consistent, daily, specific evidence of someone who is choosing themselves in the small moments with such regularity that the choosing has become the natural expression of who they are, rather than the effortful maintenance of a position they are holding. That naturalness, that quality of someone for whom the self-choosing has become as unremarkable as breathing, is the thing the monitoring system reads as the truly not caring. Not a decision, a way of being. And a way of being is the most permanent thing available to the narcissist, regret-producing landscape, because a way of being cannot be managed back into the framework, the way a decision can be managed, cannot be addressed by supply-seeking the way a position can be addressed, cannot be incorporated into the narcissist operational map the way a behavior can be incorporated. It simply is, permanently, outside the framework, beyond the reach of the construction's available tools, the most complete and the most permanent form of the thing that produces the regret. The third element of the how is the one that requires the most internal honesty and the most specific willingness to examine what you are actually doing and why. It is the letting go of the regret as a goal. And I know that this is the element that will produce the most resistance, because the title of SFI in this episode is How to Make a Narcissist Regret What They Did, and the third element is telling you to let go of the goal of making the narcissist regret what they did. But this is not a contradiction. It is the most important psychological truth available in this entire conversation. The regret is produced most completely and most permanently by the life that is genuinely not organized around producing it. The moment the regret becomes a goal, the moment the life you are building is in any meaningful sense oriented toward the production of the regret as its desired outcome, the life stops being the thing that produces the regret and becomes the thing that is organized around the narcissist. The performance of the life that would produce the regret, and the performance, as we have established, is inside the narcissist operational framework. It can be managed. It can be responded to. The genuine life, built without the goal of producing anything in the narcissist, is outside the framework. And outside the framework is where the permanent, functional, construction bypassing regret actually lives. So the letting go of the regret as a goal is not the abandonment of the how. It is the completion of it. It is the moment the how becomes fully genuine, fully organized around you and your life and your file, rather than partially genuine and partially aimed at the narcissist. And the full genuineness is what produces the full permanence of the regret, its functional presence in the narcissist's psychology, not as something you aimed at them, as something that arrived in the landscape of their psychology, as the unavoidable consequence of your genuine absence and your genuine life, and the genuine quality of your thriving that was never designed to reach them, and reach them completely, because genuine things always do. That is the how. That is all of it. The genuine investment in what you actually want. The consistent daily practice of choosing yourself in the small moments. The letting go of the regret as a goal. 3 things. All of them organized around you. None of them aimed at the narcissist. All of them producing in the narcissist the most permanent and the most specifically functional version of regret available in their psychology. Not because you aimed for it, because you were too busy building the life that was always yours to build, to aim at anything else. And the narcissist, monitoring the construction of that life from whatever distance the truly not caring has created, experiences the regret not as something you did to them, but as something the quality of your living does to the specific place in their psychology, where the loss of what you provided lives permanently and without adequate management. That is the forever in the title, not the duration of your effort, the permanence of the loss. And the permanence of the loss is the permanence of the regret. And the permanence of the regret is the natural consequence of the permanence of your genuine, fully invested, completely self-organized life, which was never about them, which was always about you, which is exactly what makes it work.